I love video games because they can make you feel things that almost nothing else can. They pull you into another world and completely disconnect you from reality for a while. But there are also moments when I genuinely start to hate them. Over the last few years, some design trends have become more and more common, and every time I see them, I sink before I even start playing. Not because they're difficult, because they're annoying. So let's start with distant checkpoints. Back in the 90s, this wasn't even a discussion. Most games didn't even have checkpoints at all. You either had limited lives or you died and started over from the beginning. Super Mario Bros., for example, worked exactly like that. You had a limited number of lives, and once they were gone, you had to start over. That was completely normal back then, because saving your progress wasn't always possible due to hardware limitations. But today isn't 1985. Consoles have SSDs, games autosave every 30 seconds. Memory isn't the problem anymore. So when I have to spend 2 minutes running back just to retry a boss, I honestly can't think of a good reason anymore. The first game that comes in mind is Hollow Knight. Some bosses are far enough from the nearest bench that every attempt starts with a little walk. The first time, fine. The second, still fine. But the 10th, at some point, you're not fighting the boss anymore, you're commuting. And as a developer, I understand why. If you put a checkpoint right outside the boss room, players can make 50 attempts in half an hour. But you also have to consider the other side. If the boss is already incredibly difficult and every failed attempt comes with another long walk, getting through that fight can take forever. Then there are release date delays. But first, let's make an important distinction here. If a game made by a solo or a couple of developers gets delayed, I completely understand that. That's completely fine. Honestly, I almost expect it. What I struggle to understand is when huge studios do it. The ones that announce a game years before it's actually ready. Then comes the first delay. Fair enough. Then the second. And at that point, I just stopped believing release dates altogether. Cyberpunk was delayed multiple times before launch. Assassin's Creed Shadows also went through several delays. And GTA 6, after originally targeting fall 2025, was eventually pushed into 2026. Twice. At this point, release dates barely mean anything anymore. Here's another one I can't stand. Mouse cursors in console menus. Why? Seriously, why? Okay, I get it that many games launch on both PC and consoles. Building one interface instead of two saves time and money. That makes perfect sense for the developer, but not for the player, because moving a tiny cursor with an analog stick is painfully slow. You go too far, you move back, too far again. By the time you've opened the settings menu, 15 seconds have passed. Menus shouldn't be a challenge. Consoles have always worked perfectly with directional navigation. Up, down, left, right, done. Every time I see a cursor, my first thought is that someone designed the interface for a mouse and then copied it into console without changing much. And every single time I think exactly the same thing. This could have been done better. This one genuinely annoys me. I'm not talking about important story scenes. I actually enjoy those. Well, the first time I watched them. But if I've already watched it 9 times, it gets annoying. Especially before a difficult boss. Your character starts talking, the villain replies. Someone explains a mechanic, and then you die, and then everything starts again. The same dialogue, the same animations, the same camera shots, again and again and again. Eventually, I'm not even listening anymore. I'm just staring at the skip button, hoping that somehow it will work this time. The funny thing is, the cutscene might actually be really well written. The first time I'm invested. the 10th time I know the dialogue better than the developers. And that's a shame, because good writing should never become a punishment. This is also one of those things that's easy to miss during development. Because maybe as a developer you watch that scene once, then you tweak it, then you move on. The player, on the other hand, might watch it 50 times in one evening. Those are two completely different perspectives. So please, just let me skip it. And finally, let's talk about DLC, because someone has to say it. Stop taking advantage of real fans. And I want to be clear, some DLCs are fantastic. They add hours of gameplay, and you can tell the developers genuinely had more ideas they wanted to explore. And I'm happy to pay for that. But then there are DLCs that exist purely to monetize everything. The color pack, the costume pack, the resource pack, the deluxe edition, the ultimate edition, the ultimate definitive legendary edition. Eventually, I don't even know what I'm buying anymore. Some expansions have become just as beloved as the base game. Others have been heavily criticized because players felt they should have been part of the original release instead. What bothers me is when I get the feeling that part of the game was intentionally removed, just so it could be sold back to me later. These days I usually don't even buy DLC anymore. And you know what the real problem is? Some of my favorite games ever do one or more of these things. Maybe that's exactly why they annoy me so much, because they happen in games I genuinely love, and every one of these decisions makes me spend less time actually playing and more time waiting. So what about you? What's one game mechanic or one modern gaming trend that instantly makes you sick, even if you still love the game? Let me know here down in the comments. Thanks for watching.